Hello, YouTubers. Welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 3 episodes for you this morning and a special edition, if I can get that worked in as well. This has 4 articles in this episode. All the URLs are in the description of the video, so you can take a look at those at your leisure. The first one is off of USDefenseWatch.com, and it says Fort Lauderdale shooter was Ashik Hamad on MySpace, recorded Islamic music. This Chicago Tribune article confirms the Fort Lauderdale shooter Esteban Santiago is from Peñuelas, Puerto Rico, and has a brother named Brian. Why aren't establishment propaganda journalists asking Brian about Ashik Hamad? And then it has here breaking. Fort Lauderdale terrorist Esteban Santiago joined MySpace as Ashik Hamad, recorded Islamic music. Got news January 7th of 2017. Fort Lauderdale airport terrorist Esteban Santiago registered on MySpace under the name Ashik Hamad and recorded Islamic religious music on the site. 3 years before he ever deployed to Iraq as a U.S. soldier, destroying the lying mainstream media's narrative that he was just a mentally disturbed veteran and that Islam had nothing to do with it. Here's how we know that. A search of public records database, Nexus, reveals that Puerto Rican Esteban Santiago has a brother named Brian Santiago and 2 emails registered to his name. And they have a picture of that information here. And the article goes on and says the second email, Naota, and that's Naota 33 at hotmail.com, is how Got News exclusively visually identified Santiago before every mainstream media outlet and discovered he was posting on an explosives weapons forum about mass downloading Islamic terrorist propaganda videos in 2007 yesterday. Today we discovered the first email, natoa17gmail.com, in the MySpace database that was leaked earlier this year. This is the raw data we found. 211355052, Naoa017 at gmail.com, Ashik Hamad, and then it's got a string of numbers and letters after that. It says the middle entry, Ashik Hamad, can be added to the MySpace URL to discover the profile that was registered to the email address, Naota017 at gmail.com. Sure enough, Esteban Santiago registered a MySpace account under the name Ashik Hamad. Ashik Hamad lists peninsulas, Puerto Rico, or I'm not sure how to pronounce that, Peñuelas, Puerto Rico. That's his location, just like Esteban Santiago's records in Nexus. And take a look at the 3 songs recorded by Ashik Hamad. The first one is titled La Ahala I Allah, which is Arabic for there is no God but Allah, and the first half of the Muslim Declaration of Faith, Ahada. And then there's an archive that you can click on to view that. And it says, if the location and emails weren't enough proof, Ashik Hamad also has Brian Santiago, Esteban's brother, as a connection. And then there's another picture of some information underneath that. So you want to take a look at that. You can pull up that URL and take a look at that information. The next article I have for you is off of BizPac Review. It says torture video of disabled white man, not the first sick torture from thugs, disturbing detail revealed in court. In their first court appearance since being arrested for kidnapping, battery, and hate crimes in Tuesday's torture of mentally disturbed white men, 4 Chicago thugs allegedly responsible were denied bail on Friday. Meanwhile, more disturbing details are emerging about the case, many of them revealed at Friday's hearing. According to the New York Post, one of the four thugs demanded $300 from the victim's mother while he was being held, according to prosecutors. During the hearing, prosecutors also revealed that the victim suffers from attention deficit disorder and schizophrenia. In addition to the horrendous torture shown on the 30-minute video, the teenage victim was also beaten in the stolen van while being transported. Officials also said the victim allegedly had a stock, and I bet that's supposed to be sock, stuffed into his mouth taped shut, and his hands bound with a belt. Far from being misguided youths who took a prank too far, were actually far from innocent even before this incident took place, according to the Post. Tanisha Covington, age 24, has a 2007 juvenile arrest for felony attempted armed robbery. Jordan Hill, age 18, has a 2015 juvenile arrest for armed robbery, possession of a stolen vehicle, and residential burglary. Covington's sister, Brittany, and Tesfaye Cooper, both 18, have minor nonviolent offenses on their wraps. But it's Cooper, the star of Tuesday's video, who interestingly has a history of posting disturbing things on Facebook, the Post writes. 2 months before the kidnapping, Cooper posted a violent YouTube video in which he points to what looks like a BB rifle at the camera and draws, boom, put it in ya, A. Tesfaye Cooper, 18, published a YouTube clip on October 22nd under the name PBG Hothead, a reference to the North Side Chicago-based Pooh Bear gang. Smoke yo A, he says in a nearly incoherent clip, damn, big A, bitch A, N, boom, put a bullet in your A. And there, it shows the video in this if you want to take a look at that. It says, so it would seem that posting videos showing torture of a young mentally disabled white man while the perpetrators shout F Donald Trump and F white people was merely the next step in a series of progressions for these thugs. We can only hope it'll be the last. The article I have for you is off of the Federalist, and it says, Christians need to stop being so naive about Muslim immigration. Many Christians have been lulled into a childish view of the world and think that deep down Muslims are not too different from them. Soon after the November attacks at the Ohio State University, we learned the Somalia Muslim perpetrator had been welcomed to the United States as a refugee by Catholic Charities of Dallas. This bit of news caught my attention because years ago I worked there for a brief time. In the early 1990s, after graduating from college, I served there for a year as part of a volunteer stipend program, helping immigrants caught here illegally prepare their cases for immigration court. My roommates worked on a refugee resettlement site, helping newly arrived families with refugee status. I've continued to be fascinated with immigration and looked for ways to be helpful. It's what drew me to teaching English to immigrant students. But my perspectives widened and concerns grew as I learned more about our porous borders and problems throughout the West with assimilations, and I witnessed the growing influence of a warped multiculturalism that convinces many to quash any uneasiness about newcomers, no matter how reasonable. In voicing my concerns, I've been slammed by other Christians who called me ignorant and uncaring. Although I worked for Catholic Charities, I'm a lifelong Protestant. I was raised Lutheran and for many years now have attended conservative Presbyterian churches. Multiculturalism long ago began to muscle its way into mainstream Protestant churches, but is now running amok in conservative churches too, with many Christians fearful of being called a bigot for criticizing other traditions and beliefs. While those in mainline churches tout diversity in a way that differs little from those outside the church, more devout Christians have adopted multiculturalism as a way to better evangelize. Emotion and sentiment have taken over reason, leaving people without the resources to sufficiently analyze threats to our culture and safety, and in some cases, even diminishing interest in doing so. The more pious shame others for their concern, saying sacrifice and saving souls should come way before worries about ensuring America's survival as a strong nation. Don't seem to get it. Trump did well among evangelicals in winning the presidency. Many conservative Christians cited Supreme Court picks as the top reason they were voting for him, despite his personal moral failings. It's far from clear that Christians en masse would fully support proposals to seriously restrict Muslim immigration, especially once they face the wrath of activists and journalists more determined than ever to smear them as racist. Also, there's a strong movement among intellectual evangelicals to embrace Muslim immigration. In December of 2015, more than 100 evangelical leaders met at Wheaton College to discuss how Christians should respond to the migrant crisis that began early that year. They released a statement that gave only passing mention to security concerns while focusing primarily on telling Christians not to be fearful. Motivated by fear, but love for God and others. We cannot allow voices of fear to dominate. The statement read, but rational fear is a healthy thing. It serves to protect, and in protecting shows love. The Bible has plenty of examples of people taking measures to protect their communities. There's no reason to fear every single Muslim we meet, but looking at the bigger picture, there are perfectly valid reasons to fear the violence and political and cultural change a growing Muslim population can bring. Some of my devout Christian friends insist we shouldn't speak out much about atrocities Muslims have committed because if we do, Muslims won't be open to hearing the gospel from us. Neither, they say, should we voice too many criticisms about religious differences that might upset them. But how can there be any hope of having functioning multicultural society if there are taboos against criticizing traditions that aren't your own? This misguided quest to be nice and welcoming creates space for strong-armed to run over the weak, and the very type of scenario you would think Christians concerned about justice would care about. Muslims aren't just another denomination. I've also heard Christians point to successful assimilation of immigrants in years past as proof that waves of Muslim immigration will work out just fine too. Again, pouring into Europe, my friends shared stories of their ancestors arriving at Ellis Island as if there are few differences between what happened then and what's happening now. I recently got into a discussion with a Baptist pastor who says we shouldn't worry since competing Protestant sects as well as Catholics were eventually accepted into the mainstream of American life. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around how my educated friends and educated church leaders can't see that differences between Islam and Christianity are profoundly greater than differences between various Christian groups. They have not read the history of, or try that again, have they not read the history of Islamic conquest? Can they not observe the differences in today's world between countries founded on Christian and Enlightenment values? Are they not aware of the widespread problems with migrants assaulting women in Germany, one of the latest victims being a daughter of a European official who was raped and drowned? Have they not heard about the Sahara law courts Muslim immigrants have created in England and the schools where Muslim children are taught barbaric practices? Last year, I joined a class at my church sponsored by the Crescent Project, a Christian ministry founded to share the gospel with Muslims globally. In some respects, it's an organization I'm happy to support. The efforts seem sincere and helpful in prodding Christians' previous interculture experience to step outside their comfort zones. Yet it's also one of those programs that leads to some Christians becoming so filled with zeal, they develop tunnel vision. One woman in my class said she used to be afraid when she saw a Muslim at the grocery store, but now, thanks to the class, believes it's God's will for Muslims to come to the United States so we can witness to them. I've heard this idea expressed elsewhere as well, sometimes with great enthusiasm. God is blessing us, the thinking goes, by bringing Muslims here so we don't have to travel abroad to reach them. However, this turns previous concepts of missionary work on the heads. Missions used to be primarily about assuming risk for yourself and perhaps your family as you ventured into unsafe terrain. By endorsing growing rates of Muslim immigration into the United States, Christians are insisting that their neighbors here assume the risk too for all the conveniences of their evangelical programs. Such rosy pictures can likely be traced partly to the fact that even in many conservative churches today, pastors shy away from discussing evil and the reality that there are people in this world seeking to deceive and destroy. We've been marinating in a theology that forces excessively on grace and inner peace to the exclusion of other parts of the Bible that tell us evil is always on the march. Both the Old and New Testament make frequent use of words such as battle, soldier, and warfare in both the literal sense and in the metaphorical spiritual sense. But you will be hard-pressed to hear those words in sermons today. Many Christians have been lulled into a childish view of the world and think that deep down everyone is not too different from them. But history and the contemporary world should know, or try that again, but history and the contemporary world should show us that fundamentalism, Islam, is radically different from the beliefs of Christians and other Americans. If we don't fully wake up to this reality, we will pay a heavier price for our delusions that we already have. So there you have that article. And the next one I have, final one in this episode, is off of Western Journalism. And it says, Cannabis Coalition plans to hand out joints at Trump's inauguration. The DC Cannabis Coalition, known as the DCMJ, has announced that it will be handing out 4,200 joints of legally grown marijuana at President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration, January the 20th. We legalized cannabis in Washington, D.C., and we are not going to let anyone take that away from us, the group wrote on its website. This is an outreach opportunity to show President Trump's supporters that we are the marijuana majority. Gather on the west side of the DuPont Circle at 8 a.m. local time for coffee and tea. Afterwards, attendees will walk down to the National Mall at 10 a.m. At 4 minutes and 20 seconds, speech will light up unless President Trump comes out now in support of full cannabis legalization in all 50 states and D.C., DCMJ wrote on Facebook. Adam Ettinger, founder of the coalition, helped organize the Washington ballot initiative to legalize possession of small amounts of marijuana. Under DC's initiative 71, it's now legal to have 2 ounces or less of cannabis, but it is still illegal to sell it. I'm trying to get this to scroll up, and I'm trying to keep from laughing. Okay, it says, we don't want change whatsoever, he told The Hill when speaking about the inauguration initiative. This is really a gift for people who come to Washington, D.C. Ettinger went on to say that he wants people to feel welcome when they walk up to the demonstration, that it is not an anti-Trump event, nor is it designed to be a disruption. I think it's a good protest, he told WUSA TV. If someone wants to do it, they are risking arrest, but it's a protest. And you know what? The National Mall is the place for protest. And there's some tweets and stuff in this, and it goes on. It says, Ettinger went on to say that he is hopeful the Trump administration will not cause problems for the coalition and its values. However, the group is preparing for the worst. As of Wednesday, 222 people indicated they were interested in attending the DC Inauguration Day event on Facebook. So I guess they're going to pass out 4,200 joints at the inauguration if they don't get too high to remember what they're doing and smoke too much ahead of time and end up just going to 7-Eleven for munchies instead. But there you have that information. I thought you'd enjoy that article. So with that said, that's the end of the first episode, and I'll see you in the next one. If you like what we're doing, give it a thumbs up, Share it on your social media. Be sure and subscribe. Click that bell on the subscription button and check the box so that you get email alerts every time I put out a show, and it'll keep you informed. We'll see you later.